All right. Should we wait till there's a certain amount of people in?
Yeah, let's give it a few minutes for people to join. And then we can introduce ourselves. Always takes a couple minutes for people to trickle in.
I think we'll have a really good conversation today. Our panelists are top notch. I'm
Yeah,
really looking forward to this.
likewise. I'm excited to hear everyone's insight. Maybe we should get started and start introductions.
All right. Well, good morning and afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us here today. It is truly a pleasure to welcome you to Climate Change and the Future of Sustainability and Travel, where we've gathered a group of experts to deep dive into the current state of sustainability in the hotel industry and the future we're headed towards. Whether you're here with us virtually or watching this back, we're thrilled to have you as part of this conversation, and we hope you enjoy. As climate change intensifies with increasingly frequent severe natural disasters such as wildfires, hurricanes, floods, and heat waves, its impact on the tourism industry has become increasingly evident. And simultaneously, the travel industry is a major contributor to climate change, accounting for about 8% of global greenhouse emissions, according to the World Travel and Tourism Council. With this, sustainability is a term that has evolved from a buzzword to a critical practice, not just for the environment, but for business, communities, and the global economy. Along with the environmental impacts, travelers are also growing more aware of sustainability practices and proactively look for hotels that share the same mindset and that also connect them to the destination in a meaningful and authentic way. So, with that in mind, today we'll talk to hospitality leaders that are already addressing these needs and paving the way forward for sustainable and regenerative travel. Thank you for being here today, and let's get started. Speaking with us today, and each panelist will have about 2 to 3 minutes to introduce themselves after I say their name, is Hans Pfister, co-founder of the Cayuga Collection.
Hi, Paula, everybody, fellow panelists, attendees. My name is Hans Pfister. I'm joining you today from Manuel Antonio in Costa Rica. That's where one of our hotels of the Cayuga Collection is located. The Cayuga Collection is a collection of small, sustainable luxury hotels in Central America. Currently, we have hotels in Costa Rica, Panama, Nicaragua, and Guatemala. The hotels are high-end luxury hotels, but the luxury evolves less around stuff, but more about experiences and authenticity. And I'm happy to go a little bit more into that. We've been doing this under the Cayuga name for 22 years. I personally have been in Costa Rica for 30 years working in sustainable tourism. I'm also the president of the Costa Rican Ecotourism Society, Ecotourism Chamber and Sustainable Tourism Chamber. And it's a real pleasure to be here, and I look forward to the questions and explaining a little bit more what sustainability means for us at the Cayuga Collection.
Perfect, and we're glad to have you here. Next is Tony Stokel, CMO of SH Hotel and Resorts.
Thank you so much, Paula, and good day, panelists and attendees. It is super exciting for me to join this panel. It is a topic that's really near and dear to the heart of all team members at SH Hotels. And for those of you who don't know much about SH Hotels, maybe you know a little bit more about the brands that make up the company. That includes One Hotels, which has fantastic destinations and a true steep positioning in a mission-driven hospitality that's rooted in nature. We have Baccarat Hotels, which is, of course, the brand behind the legacy of Baccarat Crystal. That's a 260-year-old brand. And one of our newest endeavors is Treehouse Hotels, which of course speaks to nature quite a bit as well, but it also speaks to the fun and playful mindset of travel, still rooted in nature. And one of the things that really ties all of these together, whether it is truly a nature-driven brand like One Hotels or Baccarat, one of our missions or our compass for the company at SH is improving the planet one hotel at a time. So no matter what we do and how we deliver experiences, it really is about ingraining ourselves in the communities that we are in, and certainly celebrating and lifting up nature and sustainability wherever we can, right? So that's a deep part of our purpose as a company and our compass. So super excited to engage in the conversation here today.
All right, great. And next we have Jaz Ahmed, CCO at Because, a sustainability data management hub.
Hello all, greetings from Denmark, Copenhagen. Yeah, as Paula introduced me, my name is Jaz. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer and the co-founder of Because Platform. Simply put, I'm not a hotel. I'm actually more the tool which hotels can use to collect sustainability data, report on legislation. So basically, we're building the hub where all this data gets collected, streamlined, and then distributed. We work with tablet hotels as well, where we distribute the data so that it can be displayed to conscious consumers, and basically provide the tools that different parties in the travel ecosystem need to push the sustainability agenda forward. We work with the hotels, which is our primary end user, on giving them the tools they need to collect, manage, coordinate, report, and distribute sustainability data in multiple different landscapes. Then we work with certifications, 65 different international certifications, so that hotels can get certified, but also so that we can get that data distributed. We work with destinations as well as another player, because they're key here. They help guide the local hotels in what direction to go towards or where to focus their efforts when it comes to sustainability. And finally, we work with what we call marketplaces such as Tablet, who want to consume this data and display it to consumers and travelers. So we kind of sit in the center of all of this. Super excited about the discussion today. Sustainability is everything that we do, and really, really thankful for being part of this.
Thank you for being here. And last, we have Cara Fulcher, the Global Sustainability Leader at Michelin US.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Paula. It's a real delight to be with all of you today. I'm Cara Fulcher. I'm the Director of Sustainability for Michelin in North America. And so it's really a pleasure to move across the mobility industry and the impacts of mobility, and to join our colleagues here in hospitality today. Thank you,
Right.
Paula.
Absolutely great having you all here, and thank you for introducing yourselves. So we're just going to get straight into it. I think when the buzzword sustainability, not buzzword at this point, with the term sustainability that comes up, there's such a sweeping definition of it that I think a lot of guests and even hoteliers get confused of exactly what that means. So I'd like to throw out to actually Cara first. Michelin has set a high standard for various industries. And how does Michelin define sustainability, and how can that relate to the hotel industry?
Thanks, Paul. That's a good question, and it's one that I often start my discussions, even internally, with, because at Michelin we do take that sweeping approach because it defines really everything that we do. So we look back at a definition that was established by the United Nations in the early 1980s that talks about sustainability as meeting needs of people today in ways that do not prevent future generations from meeting their needs. So we have to meet our needs, but we have to do it in ways that are responsible. And so for us internally, we articulate that using another very well-established idea of the triple bottom line, really, that looks at, as we like to refer to it, people, profit, and planet. So we know we have to be a company that succeeds, right? We can't, this is not charity, this is not philanthropy. We cannot go broke. But we need a planet and a community that is thriving and functioning for us to be a going concern over the long term. So we need to be functional as a company and a functioning economy. But then we need to also take care of our people, whether that's our employees or our community or our supply chain. And then what most of us think about when we hear sustainability, then the environmental part, that we have to take care of the planet, the natural resources that make all of this possible, whether that's how we, what kind of energy we use and how we use it, water consumption and quality, reliance on raw materials, and of course the ecological services that nature provides to us. So all of that gets wrapped in. It's a lot to pay attention to, but I've already heard threads of that coming from our fellow my fellow panelists here this morning, that it's not just one thing in the environment, right? We talk about sustainability. It's not just turning off the light switch. It's not just driving fewer miles or kilometers or in a different kind of vehicle. There's also concern about how do we engage with nature. And I certainly think that for many of us, that question of how do we engage in nature and preserve nature is what we find much more inspirational than questions about how much fuel did I save when I drove here, or what kind of vehicle was I in. I think that's really what drives all of us on. And so that's a big part of how we think about sustainability. But again, and I think this is a point that's especially relevant as we talk about the hospitality industry. You know, for us, we have a lot of products, a lot of feedstocks, a lot of raw materials that go into the tires that we make. That's a global supply chain that's very complicated. But I think in the hotel industry, there's also a complicated supply chain, maybe more at hand in some cases, but big workforces that have a lot of issues. And so as we talk about that big picture of sustainability beyond just the environmental concerns, but also social sustainability, there are some real salient questions across industries that we can all weigh in on.
And kind of building off that, you mentioned, you know, preserving nature and the environment around us. And and this is a question more for Tony and Hans, how would this differ in sense that for more urban hotels, why is sustainability still important for hotels located in the city, and how might their view of sustainability differ to those more in a rural environment?
Yeah, I'm happy to get started on this one. I think there's an opportunity to really look at the carbon footprint and the impact that an urban hotel, an urban setting has, right? Which can certainly be amplified compared to other locations and resort destinations for sure. I think the important part is that there never really is a one-size-fits-all approach, number one. Different parts of the world are at different levels of sophistication when it comes to sustainable practices. And then really understanding that every location and every hotel can be a unique situation, right? You could be dealing with a brand new hotel that is being converted from an office building where you have an opportunity to conserve the existing footprint, or you have a 120-year-old building that is a hotel that has a very different scenario to play with. From a brand perspective at One Hotels, what we really focus on is looking at the common thread, and that is bringing you closer to nature through biophilic design, through the subtle touch points that we have throughout the experience that you might have as a guest in your guest room and in public spaces, but really inspiring you, whether you're in an urban hotel in the downtown New York or in any other market. There's always an opportunity to bring nature back into the design and touch points from that perspective, right? So for us, it is very much about rainwater collection, water conservation. It's about energy conservation, but really the opportunity that travel brands have and hotel brands have is to inspire the consumer, right? And that is often not given in an urban setting. But imagine sustainability today is not always a positive conversation. It is sometimes politicized, right? It is to some a daunting topic. And so I think as hotels, we have an opportunity to inspire people and actually showcase that you don't always have to sacrifice something living a sustainable lifestyle. It can actually mean that even though you're traveling to an urban destination that has an immense carbon footprint, we have an opportunity to show you that a luxury experience and a sustainable one don't have to be mutually exclusive. So we do that through, again, through a lot of design, a lot of storytelling, and certainly our operational practices through and through. So it really doesn't feel contrived, but it kind of has a common thread throughout.
Perfect. And Hans, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so we're not in urban destinations. We're a little bit more out in the, on islands, on in nature reserves, and a little bit in that. And so I totally agree with the inspiring part with Tony, right? It's sustainability is not about telling people what not to do, because there's certainly some sustainability fatigue out there. It's like I don't want to hear it. I know we're all going bust, and I don't want to hear it. So our approach has been really storytelling, right? We're telling people what we're doing and getting them excited and getting them on board. So just an example. We've been trying to figure out how to brand what we do in terms of sustainability, because sustainability as a word is not sexy. And then you can try to rebrand it into regenerative and into this and that, and it's still not sexy, right? So we came up with this idea and we call it Luxury Rewilded. So we said, okay, we are luxury hotels, but we actually done something in our properties that took them to another level. So I'm sitting here looking out at a rainforest. And that rainforest actually used to be a pasture 20 years ago. It was a pasture. So when we started this hotel, we started by healing the land. We started to plant trees, to just not cut down things anymore. The animals came back, and now it's a vibrant place where the Sloth Foundations brings us sloths that they rescued and put back into nature. So the land healed. And then what happens is something amazing, is the employees that work here are not just taking care of our guests and making sure they have the best possible vacation ever, but they become guardians of the land. They're, like, don't feed the animals, don't throw this here. They become very engaged in what they do here. And then that passion for sustainability jumps over to the guest. And all of a sudden, that's when the magic happens. This is when the guests say, wow, I came here for a luxury vacation, but actually I'm learning a lot and I'm seeing a lot of things that I didn't expect. And that makes me feel different. So we might have people that really are not concerned with sustainability, but when they see what's happening here at the properties, then they get inspired. So I think Tony mentioned the word inspiring, and I think that's what it's about right now. This is what we have to focus on.
And Hans, it's a great and very inspiring story as well. And again, these examples can transfer to an urban location, right? So in Central Park, the hotel near Central Park, we have 36,000 ivy plants on the facade of the building, right? And certainly helps with greenhouse gas absorptions, right? But it certainly also gives you a very much of a different environment, different design. In Mayfair, we have 1,200 plants plants inside the hotel, right? So everywhere you look, there's greenery throughout. So you can take that idea that Hans mentioned also to take that into an urban environment by reintroducing people to nature. Yeah, for sure. It's great.
I think it's interesting too. I think there is, there is some fatigue around the idea of sustainable travel. And I think what we've seen in some of the data that we looked at was that people everything feels very passive to them. So they see what hotels are doing, but they want to be able, they can't really see it tangibly. They aren't involved in it. It's very sort of a thing that's happening outside of them. And so I think that naturally leads to a little bit of passivity or ambivalence about it. And people are sort of like, not only does it feel doom and gloom, but you're like, oh, nothing I'm doing is really making a difference. So I'm curious if anyone, maybe Jazz, if like, is there more of a movement to get guests involved in some of these sustainability measures by hotels specifically?
Yeah, thank you so much. Just also to touch a bit upon what actually both Cara, Tony, and Hans were saying a bit. One is the definition of sustainability, but also like the initiatives that you guys have just described. There's a new term, and I know we all hate that there's coming a new term as well, because it's been changing so much throughout the years, but net positive, when you start giving something back to it. So one thing is net zero, where you're just reaching break even, but at a certain point, if you have initiatives where you're actually giving back, and some of the initiatives that I'm hearing both from Hans and Tony on this is you're almost at a point where you're giving back to the community, where sustainability has become so much of a strength that it's a positive output. And that's what, when you asked me, Nikki, on the data. So there's two sides of looking at it. One, yes, we do see that the wants need from the hotel side has been increasing globally. It's both in all regions. Obviously, there's some regions who need to be more sophisticated, but I would also say in those regions, sustainability might be more different, because we typically tend to put it in a box and say this is one for all. And as this panel has also already decided, it's not one for all. So it's not just the what you're doing, but it's also what challenges are you facing in your local environments. So it's very different from, for example, if I had to compare just my multi-ethnicity, I live in Denmark, but my parents are from Pakistan, and I can tell you that the challenges are very different from Denmark to Pakistan, in that. So data from hotels is showing that they want to do more. They don't know oftentimes where to start. Some of the independent hotels, the big brands, they have a corporate strategy. They have the resources behind it. So that's one. The second part is consumers. If you look at the Booking.com studies that have been coming out throughout the past 3 years, you can see that the wants and need for sustainability has been growing ever since. I think it's up at almost 69% of travelers wanting to see. There's a difference to be made here as well. That's where I'm going to be a bit critical. Is one thing is wanting a sustainable property. The other thing is paying the extra for that. And there's still a little way to go. There are obviously consumers who are willing to pay the extra, but the cost to sustainability comparison is it's still more on cost. However, if we can get the point where it's equal, where, well, you can choose a property which is sustainable and costs the same as a property that's not sustainable, then the guiltiness of not choosing that starts playing a role. So there's all of these like elements to that play a role, and that's what we're seeing. The simple answer is it's only going one way, as I see it right now, which is also why solutions like us are starting to exist.
Great. And kind of just to touch a little bit more on that, on guest expectation and kind of what they want. I know because they help, hotels gather their data and apply for these different certifications, such as Green Key and EarthCheck. And like, what are the pros and cons of relying on third-party sustainability certifications, as well as are eco-conscious travelers more likely to choose hotels with green certifications and sustainability initiatives?
Oh, that's a really good question, and not one which I'm in the place to actually answer, because that depends on the marketplaces. There has been some studies, none that I would say are conclusive so far, that show that travelers are willing to book there. However, the return on investment hasn't been decided on whether that actually increases the conversions. So I'm on a very, commercial mindset, I'm thinking in that sense. So it's nothing conclusive, but there are studies that show that I think it was around 8 to 10% increase in bookings, where consumers are picking the certified establishment. Now, on the first question, there's a couple of layers. So the first part is the role I think certifications play is they give a sort of guiding book to what you can achieve. So they set you on a path and say that, well, this is where you can be. And in many certifications, the great programs, there's a lever built in that you have to improve every year, or else you don't keep the certification. So they kind of set you on a path and get you there. The second part of it is what I find great is, especially the certifications that take local requirements into consideration, they localize sustainability. So they take into the social, the biodiversity aspects of the local environment. And again, if you're a big brand that has hotels in multiple different countries, all of it and states, well, you can still choose that certification, and they would have localized it across the different countries depending on what the sustainability challenges are. So that was that aspect. But in Europe, we have a new legislation coming out called the Green Claims Directive. that requires data to be shown on marketplaces to be third-party verified. So that's where the push is also coming from. So if you want it to be on marketplaces such as Booking and Google and the others, it has to be validated by third parties. And the reason for that is that consumers need to trust data. Self-reported data is simply just not enough anymore. You do need to have a third-party certification. None of us would use any tool which didn't have a certification with privacy or GDPR or data aspects. So the same conditions apply now to sustainability as well, because we want to trust the data and we want to rely that it has been verified by a third party, unbiased.
That makes a lot of sense. I think circling back a little bit to the cost of taking sustainable measures, and I know, Kara, you kind of touched on this before about how you have to find that balance between, you know, profit and sustainability. And there was a question as well from the audience: Does green, sustainable, or regenerative have to be more expensive, or is that just a myth? Same for ESG investments. ESG is environmental, social, and governance. Do ESG investments need to be concessionary? I don't know if anyone wants to tackle that. Is it a myth that being sustainable has to be more expensive?
I'll take that. I don't think so. You know, I don't think that being sustainable means being more expensive. No, I mean, straight out, you know, we've been running 30 years of sustainable hotels, and it doesn't mean that they're more expensive. Happens to be my experience that when we bring, like, for example, when we take on a new property, you know, and we bring sustainable practices to this hotel, there might be some initial investments, but they pay off quite quickly. But it's not so much even about the energy saving, you know, like, okay, we now build solar panels to generate hot water heating and all of that. But the bigger impact, in my opinion, is you get employees signed up for something bigger than just being a waiter or being a cook or being a housekeeper, and they feel they're part of something bigger. And then their performance goes up tremendously, and you're getting a lot more out of those employees in terms of guest service, in terms of even efficiency and everything. And that really takes you to the next level. So I don't think so. I really don't think that being sustainable means being more, having higher costs.
I would fully echo that, Hans. First of all, on the team member and associate side, we see certainly below industry average turnover rates, because people come to be part of something bigger than themselves and to be part of an organization that is in turn part of the community and helping the community, right? So I think that's a key aspect of being sustainable too, to actually sustain the communities you're a part of. And I think there are a lot of things that hoteliers can do and brands can do that don't necessarily have to cost more money, right? Waste diversion, right? Focusing on that is maybe requiring a little bit more of an operational process, but doesn't have to cost more, right? Ensuring, you know, we have a program called Certified Sustainable Gatherings, which is all about our meetings, right? And to ensure that meetings are as low impact as they possibly can. And we've gotten 97% of our meetings waste free and waste diverted, if you will. We donate any food, we make food donations, reduce food waste, you know, repurpose certain materials wherever we can. So I think there are a lot of practices, if you just stop and think a little bit more versus putting in the bin and giving things a second life or so forth, that you can do that don't cost more money necessarily, right? And I echo that.
Tony, just to compliment, you know, if you think of it, if you're buying locally, typically that's more economic, right? You know, because things don't come from as far. I'm always blown away when I go to hotels in the tropics that are not under our brand, and I see salmon on the menu, and I'm like, for God's sake, you know, why in that world would you serve salmon in Central America, right? You know, that comes from very far away and is probably not fresh when you have, like in Costa Rica, we have two oceans right on our coast. So that for one, and again, you know, we have one of the hotels we're taking over in Guatemala. When we got there, they have Occitane products, which are wonderful. But why? You know, why would somebody go to Guatemala, to the Mayan world, and expect, you know, French products if you can produce, you know, get them locally, you know, good quality, maybe specially made for the hotel with special sense of the region. So, and for sure that's going to be more economic. And that doesn't mean we're cutting corners and we're making the experience less. I'm sure Tony's meetings that are waste-free are just as good or even better than the meetings where all the plastic plates and everything is piled up at the end, you know, because that makes you feel bad. So I think that yeah, I think we're all agree on that part very much.
Yeah, I love the examples that Hans and Tony are bringing up. You know, especially when you talk about waste in two dimensions, actually. So food waste in the United States, according to government agencies, constitutes about a third of the food we produce in the U.S. is wasted. A quarter of it is ending up in landfills. And even though it's a minority of what's going into landfills, it's a majority source of methane, so a very potent greenhouse gas that's coming out of the landfill. So avoiding food waste is just a tremendous way to save, to improve the experience, and to improve the environment all at one time. So tackling those questions of waste, and then the idea of waste-free conferences, you know, we question what resonates with our consumers. And if we talk about, oh, well, we saved the energy, you don't get lights on when you're in the, you know, when you're in certain parts of the building, that's not exactly going to inspire anybody, right? But when you can do things that also resonate with them. And clearly we have a global audience here, but in the United States, we have a long legacy really of being quite focused on litter, on waste prevention, on these kinds of things is really a perhaps not 100% on target, but as a key element of pollution. And so the more, so there's a real fixation, I would say, in the U.S. population about waste generation. Not necessarily actions always following values, but nevertheless, when we're able to see those efforts to reduce the waste, I think there's a strong resonance with the customers. And so when you talk about, yes, there are things that are going to cost more, right? There will be investments that have to be made, and sometimes those are upfront. And so you want to be sure that you've got the storytelling, you've got the proof points, you've got the demonstration of the things that are really going to inspire the customer to bring them in and to make them appreciate what you're bringing to the marketplace. So I think those are great examples you've got, Tony and Hans.
If
Well,
I can just,
go
sorry,
ahead, Jeff.
I just wanted to add a different perspective because so right now we've been looking a lot at the cost savings aspect of it. So by implementing a sustainable solution, what can you reduce in your cost savings? But there's actually also the other, which is the commercial upside. And I know, like, that's sometimes an area that people don't want to talk about, which is, well, being more sustainable, can that also be more bring in more revenue to the business? I almost feel like looking at some of the statistics that are coming, for example, I'm just going to share one from Booking.com study, 75% say they want to travel more sustainably. So can we actually afford not to be sustainable anymore if you want to tap into that market? And there's the commercial upside. So for me, I'm sometimes seeing it almost as like a marketing or sales or commercial initiative that you're saying, well, I want to tap into this audience, and in order to bring more business in, and that requires me to become also more sustainable. So there's both sides of it.
I want to talk about that a little bit. All those studies of Booking, and I don't know who else of everybody wants to be so more sustainable. And you mentioned it, Jazz. There's a huge say-do gap, and I wrote a blog about that, and I feel very strong about everybody's like, yeah, we want to, and we wish, and we could, and everything, but when it comes to walking the talk, it's not happening. It's not happening. And Kara, also what you said about waste in the United States. Man, every time I go, I just cringe, and so I was in New York a couple of weeks ago, and I was at this deli buying myself a bagel, and there was a sign, New York City banned single-use straws, plastic straws, right? You know, so great, you know. And next to it was like plastic forks, plastic knives, plastic plates, you know, and everything else. And you walk through the streets early in the morning and you see these bags and bags and bags of trash. So I don't think it's happening, you know, there's this huge say-do gap, and we're not getting to a lot of people. We're here preaching to the choir, right? I think we all drank the Kool-Aid. We know we want to be part of this, but in the end, there's just some people that don't get it, and I think that's where we get to. And this is when I come back to inspiring. And so when we talked about certifications, we talked about, you know, maybe using sustainability to attract more guests and to sell more on the revenue side. I don't use sustainability in marketing. I don't tell people to come to the Cayuga Collection hotels because we're sustainable, because that's not working. You know, I know that's not working. I ask them to come to our hotels because it's a wonderful experience in nature, culture, with the people, you know, and all of that. But what we've been doing for 20 plus years is we invite our guests when they're here to go on a back of the house sustainability tour. You know, so we're transparent hotels. There's no places in the hotels where guests aren't allowed to go. And so we invite them to join us on a back of the house sustainability tour and say, hey, we're going to go to the laundry. We're going to go to the kitchen. We're going to go to the treatment plant. We're going to go to where we separate the waste. We're going to go to where the employees eat and sleep. I'm going to show you everything. And while we're walking through all of that, we're telling you about the things we do related to sustainability. And then what happens in those guests, from being satisfied hotel guests, become what we call aficionados. They become disciples of oh, wow, you know, and then what we've seen is that a lot of those people take that inspiration and then take it back to their places. We're small hotels, you know, we don't impact a whole lot of people, but we impact people in high positions. You know, our guests are business owners, C-level employees, politicians, you know, judges, etc. So I think that by inspiring those people and having that multiplier effect, you can make a change. We work for that every day. I don't see it working 100% yet, but I will not give up hope, and I will work very hard every day to inspire more people.
Yeah, we can't to people, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you want to really understand why people travel, and they don't come home. Let me travel because I want to consume some less plastic, right? No, I want to travel because I want to have a great time. I want to relax. I want to do something for myself, meet with friends, discover something new. So ultimately, that is the business we have to be in, on delivering that experience. And then we can, through that experience, introduce them to sustainability. But no one's going to say, let me sacrifice something and book the green hotel, right? No one's actually going to really say that. But we can pepper in the experience through the sustainability storytelling on property, or through small little cues on in the experience. So we have, in our guest rooms, in the showers, we have a little hourglass that you can turn around, which is 2 minutes. And it is a shower timer. And we won't judge you if you take a 15-minute shower. But we will inspire you to take the 2-minute shower, right? To save a little bit more water. We will inspire you not to use that plastic bottle because, and if you have one, okay, but at least you get to refill it through a water dispenser, filtered water dispenser inside the guest room, right? So again, we won't judge you, which I think is the most important thing, because we have to figure out a way to lift the conversation to a positive one, so people will adopt it, in my mind, right? And so we can do that through travel in a beautiful way. Sorry,
Yeah,
Karen,
no, not at all. It's great to hear the conversation, right? And I think, Hans, you've really got that there, as well as you, Tony, that it's this question of inspiring them and showing, being the model of, so these are ways that we've solved the problem, right? Because what we run into in this space, it does feel like doom and gloom, as we mentioned before, and we don't know how to solve the problem, right? How many plastic forks do I have to say no to in a New York City deli, right? And yet that's not going to save the world. But when you're able to go back of the house, as you're talking about, when you're able to set these nudges that help people of how can we solve this and still live a life that inspires me. I mean, I think that's that's some of the great work that there's the opportunity here.
Absolutely. I think those are some great ideas that you guys have thrown out there. And I think a lot of people in the audience are going to get inspired to go and try those out for themselves. And kind of on that step of, like, we did talk about how smaller hotels can overcome, or if there is a financial barrier for them to become sustainable. And on the same note, how can those hotels also like measure the level of sustainability they're at for their location? I think, Jazz, you might be able to have some input on this. And at the same time, how can they incorporate this into the experience that they are giving their guests?
Sorry, just trying to unmute myself. So on measuring it, I would say it depends on your scope. I mean, you can easily measure in Excel sheets and Word documents and things like this as well. But if and start there. Again, certifications is a great way, but certifications also come with a price on that. So if you're not looking to get third-party certified, then just start by identifying what areas do you want to collect data on, whether that's water, energy, waste, some of the E-related ones. Start collecting that data and then use your own baseline as a way to comparison and to improve. Now, there's another way you can also do it, which is looking at what the market and other hotels are doing. I would say, unfortunately, we're not at a place where we have benchmarkable data in hospitality, where you can actually benchmark yourself on a country or other levels. So just starting from picking what areas do you want to collect, either using your own internal tools as the first stage, and once you're ready to scale it, look into more digital solutions so that you're not sitting and just reporting in Excel and Word documents. That's the place where I would start. In regards to sharing that with consumers, it really does depend on what your business is. So if you are a local hotel, independent family bed and breakfast, then being on different channels, how much would that benefit? Is that what you're doing if you're only selling to local community? Then it doesn't come out really in front there, but really making it visual. And I think some of the practices actually here that have been shared by Tony and Hans and what they do, they educate their guests on the sustainability throughout. Those are some of the practices that we're seeing being adopted more and more across hotels, where you're actually taking them past this journey of your sustainability, your individual story, and how you're helping them. And you can say almost the scope 3, the impact that that has on their further operations. That's where some of the biggest initiatives are coming. So I would say, given that it's a full journey and we don't want to be judging, it is a journey. Everybody starts somewhere and it doesn't end in that sense. Compare yourself to yourself. Don't start with comparing yourself to others. Look at your own baseline. What do you do this year, and how can you improve it for the next year? So, and that can start in simple Excel sheets. And that might sound unbiased because now I offer a digital solution for that, but that is literally where you could start.
Absolutely. And I think, starting, being able to kind of see where you are is the best way to start and where to go from there. And kind of involving more sustainability practices. For Tony and Hans, just have there been any standout initiatives that you guys have seen, especially Hans, over the last 20 years, that you've seen guests react to the best or the most, like even rewarding that you guys have felt in your career?
I think okay, before I answer that, I just want to make go back to your previous question, because you asked about, how do we measure at the hotel level? And, I agree with Jazz. And then I think this is something we're doing and we've been doing for many years. But in Costa Rica, we started this week to introduce a new tool that I think is just absolutely spectacular. This is a collaboration between the ICT, the tourism ministry, and the local business school. And we're measuring the social progress index in tourism destinations. So they've identified 33 tourism destinations across Costa Rica, and they measure how satisfied the people that live there are with their lives in terms of security, education, nutrition, everything related to how happy you are with your life. So that we are able to connect the impact of tourism to how people feel about their lives. So we're not only measuring how many national parks and how many hectares and of land is protected, but also how we're really impacting on the communities. And I think this is something I just wanted to share that because I'm really excited about that initiative, and I'm part of this program with the local tourism ministry. And I hope that all the learnings that we have from this, we can then pass on to other parts of the world who can do the same. So, okay, going back to what are the initiatives that have gone that have gotten a lot of attention? At Cayuga, we focus on two elements of sustainability. One is people, and the other thing is local. You know, I think those are the two things that are most impactful in a way, because if you are as local as can be, your footprint is down, you're supporting the local community with employment, with purchases, with everything else. And if you focus on people, people will make the difference, because when we saw during COVID that we had to kind of scale back and go on survival mode, we also saw that for some people, sustainability was not a priority. And I see that in countries where, you know, that are poorer than, you know, the United States, Europe, even Costa Rica, that there's other priorities. You know, if you don't know how to put food on the table, sustainability becomes secondary. But if you take care of the people, educate them, take care of them, you know, make sure they have a just salary and they can make a living, then they're open to those ideas. Because on the hierarchy of necessity, sustainability is not the first one, right? There's others to take care of. So I think local and people is where we get most response from internally, but also when we tell those stories of what we do with our guests. And I talked a lot already, so I'm gonna.
Well, and I think that kind of, there was a question in the chat about kind of wanting to recruit and hire the best and the brightest employees, and how you see sustainability and regeneration as sort of crucial to recruiting those employees and to bringing on these people who care about these causes.
I mean, from our perspective, having a purpose-driven brand, right? I mean, we found in One Hotels on the idea we don't need another brand, we need a better one, right? And we have one world, and we all ought to take care of it. Everyone's ability to contribute to that it really allows us to appeal to next generation team members within the local community, right? And I mentioned a little bit earlier, we do feel we have, we do know we have significantly lower than industry average turnover rates, because people are connected to their purpose. And we do, and one of our mantras is do all the good you can, right? We do engage in the local communities. And I think Hans mentioned that. Of course, you're doing an incredible job for such a long time on that. And that's definitely a key part of it. We as hoteliers have to be part of the community as it is, but I think ensuring that community can thrive and nature can thrive. It's as simple as doing a beach cleanup on one side, or supporting the local culinary arts school, right? And starting to nurture talent and enabling people to learn and grow, right? And I think figuring out a way to give back to your local communities, and we do this in every one of our hotels with highly localized programs and activities. That's really rewarding to me, right? It is, of course, on one side, how many thousands of tons of or pounds of food or tons of food we've donated and all that good stuff. Those become like large scale statistics, and that they're great and they're important to track. But the individual impact we can make on local communities is just really more impactful from a social standpoint.
And I think too, like a lot of the things that have been mentioned today, some of the measures are very scalable, whether it's a 6-room property or a 1,000-room property. You know, I think some of these things are just basic measures that you can take to have that buy-in, both from your guests and from your employees or the people you work with, people in the community, all of those things. I wanted to just address, there was a question to the panelists, if there's any plan for Michelin to provide a green key rating similar to the green star that's given to restaurants. We hope to do something like this in the future. It is, as you can imagine, extremely complicated. It's a lot easier. Well, I shouldn't say easier. It's a lot more standardized to evaluate restaurants for green practices than it is for hotels. There's so much variance in the industry and so many different kinds of regulations or practices throughout the world. So it's a much more difficult endeavor. But yes, at some point we would love to have green ratings for hotels. It is
And that's
absolutely a priority for Michelin, obviously, as Kara has spoken to and as we're aware. So
absolutely. And kind of touching on that, kind of looking to the future, what more technologies are going to come out, kind of what guest expectations are going to go through. Just to the panelists, just as our final question as we wrap this up, what emerging technologies or trends in sustainability do you see for transforming the hotel industry in the next 5 to 10 years? And how can hotels prepare for this change?
anyone wants to take a stab at
Yeah,
it?
I'm not gonna say so much about how hotels can prepare, but I mean, given we're a tech startup and we're looking at the technologies that are emerging, so more on how we can help. One biggest trend is obviously, and I think some people are going to hate me for saying it, but AI is emerging. We're seeing we're looking into ways that because how AI can actually help guide and introduce different factors to what sustainability practices you can be doing. So just from this panel, you heard, I think, at least 5, 6 different initiatives that you could implement going forth in your hotel. Now, if we had some type of shared database of all of those initiatives, then how could each hotel be tapping into that based on user-generated content? And AI can actually then digest that, look at the benchmarking, look at what things are actually improving to suggest almost as a co-pilot, just suggestions, because AI is not going to tell you what to do exactly or how that will improve, but it can give you suggestions and help that work because it is very fragmented at the moment. So those are one of the technologies that we're looking very much into on our side, on how tools and data can play a role in the decisions you make on sustainability and which practices that you implement.
Well, I'll jump in there and leave the last word to our hoteliers. So I think so not necessarily technology, but a trend that we'll see growing in the coming years is really the development of ecosystems. And Hans pointed to the waste problem in New York City, as well as in other places. And there are a lot of things where there are things we can do individually, and we need to do those things. And then there are things that can't be done individually. The complexity of the waste stream, for example, is one of those things that makes recycling, for example, or waste minimization very difficult. And so that takes lots of stakeholders involved. And I think more and more companies are reaching the point where they realize as big as they are, and even for the biggest, they don't have the wherewithal to solve these problems. And it's going to take multi-stakeholder cooperation. And so I think we'll see more and more of that maturing in the coming 5 and 10 years.
Yeah, I would probably say from a long-term perspective, some of the things we're investigating and looking into as we grow our portfolio is, alternative building materials or processes. I think there are a lot of products being investigated, like carbon negative concrete or just new recycled building materials. And I think that's certainly something we're also having our team always look at and investigate and see what we can try out with our owners and partners. But I think one important trend for all hoteliers is just being aware, and it's maybe not so much a trend, but it's a continued trend, is being aware of consumer sophistication and local regulations. And the regulations there, particularly around things like greenwashing or green lighting and whatever you want to call it, I think is not a trap that anyone wants to and should fall into, right? No one's expecting you to be perfect. Just, we're trying to do the best that we can be, and we're trying to question everything that we're not quite doing as well every day to make it better. But saying you're the greenest hotel, or you are the, you're net zero by X date, all that stuff can trip you up, right? Because consumers can see right through it, and regulators are looking at that too. So at least from my perspective and from our perspective, it's not about making these promises. It's about walking that talk, and ideally not even have to talk about it, just showing it, right? And that's probably the best advice I can give because of I think how consumers view this topic going forward.
So Paula, I think this is a great question, and I love our reaction. Like nobody jumped on that question, and that clearly shows a fact that the hospitality industry is terrible at adapting technology. Like we're always the last ones, because we're very traditionalists and we're very like, no, AI is not going to cook that steak. That employee has to be there, and we need that personal touch, and that's. That's who we are. We're service people. We have that passion. But I found that very interesting. But I think the 200-kilo gorilla in the room here is transportation. I depend on my guests to fly from United States, from Europe, from South America to Costa Rica to enjoy their vacations. So there is a strong carbon footprint to this. So if we're talking about technology, that's the technology that needs to be changed, because our footprint in the hotels is minimal. It's really like we measure it, and it's nothing compared to what it takes to get here on those planes. So I think really, if we want to make a big difference, it's in terms of transportation technology, getting people from one part of the world to the other. That's what we need to look at. And unfortunately, I'm not an engineer and have solutions to that, but I know that just like people were able to find those vaccines for COVID and are now making AI explode, I'm sure somebody's working on something, and we're gonna figure that out very soon.
Absolutely. And I think your point really touches upon that sustainability and the whole effort towards climate change and kind of community business is much grander than just the hotel, especially even in just if you talk about even the tourism sector. There's so many, again, booking to flying or driving to the destination, booking in, and then staying at the hotel. It's all incorporated into the whole fight against climate change. So, and with that, we're actually out of time. I wanted to thank our guests again. Thank you so much for hopping on. This was a great conversation. I think our guests got a lot out of it. And then I wanted to thank all the guests for coming and watching as well. And I hope you guys have a great rest of the day.
That was fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And thanks to all the panelists. It was very, very interesting conversation.
Absolutely. Everyone have a great day. Bye.
Take care.